Welcome to Fragile Bonds, to the powerful stories of family, love, loss, and the choices that shape our lives. Now let's begin today's story.
Kate Miller's house stood in a quiet residential neighborhood on the outskirts of Boston. Kate worked as a freelance photographer from her home studio. In the soft morning light streaming through the windows, she polished her camera lens while listening to the conversation between her husband and daughter coming from the kitchen. Her husband David worked as a real estate agent, and though he was busy on weekdays and sometimes came home late, he always made time to spend with his family on weekends. And their precious daughter Emily was a bright, friendly little girl who had just turned 4. That morning, too, breakfast for 3 was laid out on the dining table. Emily was swinging her little feet as she poured maple syrup generously over her pancakes. "Mama, let's go to the park today," Emily said with a smile. "I want to ride that swing we saw yesterday again." Kate gently stroked her daughter's head. "Of course, sweetie. We can go this afternoon." David put down his coffee cup and checked his watch. "I'll come home early too. Let's have dinner together, all 3 of us." These ordinary morning scenes were more precious to Kate than anything else. Nothing special. Just the 3 of them healthy, sitting around the same table. That was enough. A few weeks later on a weekend, David made a suggestion at breakfast. "I'm thinking of taking Emily for a drive today. We'll take the coastal route and stop at that ice cream shop she likes." Kate answered while drinking her coffee. "That sounds lovely. Should I come along?" David gently shook his head. "Your client deadline is next week, isn't it? You don't have to push yourself. I'll take her." Kate hesitated a bit, but it was true that she still had many photos left to finish. "You're right. I'm sorry, I'll leave it to you." Emily jumped up and down happily. "Yay! A drive with Daddy. Mama, I'll buy you a souvenir." Kate picked up her daughter and kissed her forehead. "I'll look forward to it. Be careful." At the front door, Kate saw them off. David opened the door of the black SUV and seated Emily in the back, fastening her seatbelt. Emily waved her small hand through the window, and Kate waved back with a smile. Kate stood there until the car slowly started moving and disappeared around the corner. In the afternoon, Kate was absorbed in editing photos in her studio. Around 5 o'clock in the evening, her cell phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Is this Mrs. Miller?" A calm male voice came through. "This is the police. Your husband and daughter have been in a traffic accident." Kate's cell phone nearly slipped from her hand. "Where?" "I'll come right away." The hospital corridor smelled of disinfectant. Kate ran breathlessly to the reception desk and hurried to the emergency ward she was directed to. David was sitting on a bed in the treatment room. He had a bandage wrapped around his forehead and scrapes on his arm, but his life didn't seem to be in danger. "David, where's Emily?" Kate grabbed her husband's shoulders. David covered his face. "I'm sorry. Kate, I'm so sorry." At that moment, a doctor in a white coat and a police officer entered the room. The officer opened his mouth with a grave expression. "Mrs. Miller, please sit down." Kate shook her head. "My daughter. Let me see my daughter." The officer took a deep breath. "The car fell off a cliff and burst into flames. Your husband was thrown clear and survived, but your daughter—" "That's a lie." Kate's voice trembled. "Let me see my daughter. Right now." The doctor said quietly, "The body was severely damaged by high temperatures. However, DNA samples collected from inside the car were analyzed and confirmed to be your daughter's." Kate's knees gave out. David tried to support her, but Kate collapsed to the floor. She cried out, calling Emily's name over and over again. The funeral was held a week later. The small white coffin contained no body, only a few remains. Kate stood in front of the coffin and touched its lid with trembling hands. She couldn't embrace her daughter or give her a final kiss. David shed tears in front of the mourners. I couldn't protect my daughter. It's my responsibility. His voice was full of remorse. After the funeral ended and people left, Kate entered her daughter's room alone. A favorite stuffed animal lay on the bed, and crayon drawings her daughter had made were posted on the walls. Kate sat down on the bed and hugged the stuffed animal to her chest. Emily. Mama's here. Wherever you are, Mama will always love you. David was standing at the room's entrance. Kate, let's get counseling. We have to overcome this grief together. Kate didn't answer. She just kept hugging her daughter's stuffed animal. About 3 months after the accident, Kate still kept Emily's room exactly as it was. The toy box still contained colorful blocks, and small dresses and jackets hung in the closet. Kate entered this room every morning, made the bed, and opened the window to let in fresh air. As if her daughter might come home at any time. One evening, David stopped in front of that room. Kate, shouldn't we clean up this room soon? He chose his words carefully. So you can move forward. Kate looked up at her husband while holding her daughter's stuffed animal. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I can't yet. If I clean up this room, Emily will really be gone. David sighed deeply. I understand. Don't rush. Take your time. He said that and left the room. Kate was grateful for her husband's kindness, but somehow felt a distance. Even though they should be sharing the same pain, their grief didn't intersect. Kate's best friend Lisa visited once a week. Lisa worked as a psychological counselor and was worried about Kate's condition. Kate, let's go outside little by little. Even just for a walk, Lisa said while making tea in the kitchen. Kate was staring out the window. What should I do in a world without my daughter? Even when I take photos, Emily's smile isn't in them. Even when I pass by the park, I see the swing where I played with her. Everything reminds me of the pain. Lisa put her hand on her friend's shoulder. You need time. But you have to live. Emily would want her mama to be happy. Kate didn't answer. The word happiness felt like something that no longer had anything to do with her. David said work was getting busier and started coming home later more often. Coming home at 10 or 11 at night wasn't unusual anymore. It's hard being alone, Kate complained one night. Waiting in this quiet house until you come home. David answered with a tired expression while loosening his tie. I'm sorry. But I have to work. Bills are piling up, and we have to make a living. Kate couldn't say anything back. It was true that funeral expenses had been costly, and she herself had hardly been working. She understood that her husband had to work. But the loneliness deepened day by day. About 6 months after the accident, Kate decided to gradually resume work. She accepted a request from a client and went to photograph a wedding. But when she saw the happy smiles of the bride and groom, she remembered the happiness she had once had. Her hand trembled as she pressed the shutter, and tears clouded the viewfinder. Are you all right? The bride asked with concern. Kate hastily wiped away her tears. I'm sorry. Just give me a moment. She rushed to the bathroom and looked at her own face in the mirror. Haggard, with dark circles under her eyes. She wondered if this was really her. Her relationship with David was also becoming awkward. Her husband was trying to move forward. Kate, we have to keep living, David said one night. I'm not saying forget about Emily. But we can't just stand still forever. Kate stared at her husband. Can you forget about our daughter? Of course I can't forget, David's voice became rough. I'm suffering too. But I can't just shut myself in a room and cry every day like you. They had their first big argument. Even though they should be carrying the same pain, the way they faced that pain was too different. From that night on, they began sleeping in separate rooms. Late one night, Kate woke up thirsty. On her way to the kitchen to get some water, she heard David's smartphone ringing from the living room. Looking at the clock, it was past 1 in the morning. She heard David hurriedly answer the phone. Kate watched from behind the door. "Sorry to call so late." "It's okay, my wife's asleep." David's voice was low with an intimate tone. "Yeah, I can meet next week. At the usual place." Kate felt her chest tighten. The next morning, Kate asked casually. "Last night, the phone rang. Who was it?" David answered without looking up from his newspaper. "Work call. A client had something urgent." Kate observed her husband's expression. He didn't seem to be lying. Or was she just becoming paranoid? Maybe her grief was making her unable to judge normally. On the day 9 months after the accident, Kate went to the cemetery alone. She laid flowers in front of Emily's small gravestone and knelt down. "Emily, Mama's doing her best. Living without you is so hard." Kate placed her hand on the gravestone. "But you know, sometimes I don't understand." "Are you really in heaven?" David said he couldn't come because of work. Kate spoke to her daughter alone and headed home alone. On the way back from the cemetery, she saw a group of mothers who had also lost children comforting each other. They were supporting each other, sharing their tears. If Kate joined them, she might feel a little better. But her feet wouldn't move. Because deep in her heart, there was a question that wouldn't go away. She hadn't seen her daughter's body. She was just believing the DNA test results. Was Emily really dead? Kate shook her head. What was she thinking? The police and doctors had confirmed it. She just couldn't accept reality. That's what she told herself. One day, Kate was cleaning David's car and found a receipt from the dashboard. It was from a children's clothing specialty store. The purchase date was last week. A dress for a girl, size for a 5-year-old. Kate's hands trembled. But she didn't pursue it deeply. She didn't want to suspect her husband. In her grief, her husband was her only support. If she doubted him, she would be completely alone. It had been almost a year since the accident. Kate was gradually trying to regain her daily routine. Photography work increased, and positive reviews from clients were coming back. She was able to smile little by little. Superficially. But deep in her heart, there was a pain that wouldn't go away. And an inexplicable sense of something wrong. Her husband's late returns home. Intimate phone calls. The children's clothing receipt. Scattered pieces that still hadn't formed a shape, floating in her heart. On the night of the first anniversary, Kate sat alone in Emily's room. She hugged the stuffed animal and gazed at her daughter's photo. "Emily, Mama has lived a year without you. I didn't think it would be this hard. But you know." At that moment, Kate's smartphone vibrated. Looking at the screen, a message had arrived from an unknown number. Kate casually opened it. The moment she saw the text displayed on the screen, Kate's heart began to pound violently. Her hands trembled and she almost dropped the smartphone. "Mama, I'm alive. Whatever you do, don't contact Daddy." Kate couldn't breathe. With trembling fingers, she read the message over and over. The text didn't disappear. It was real. "Where are you?" Kate frantically replied. "Emily, is this really you?" She pressed the send button. Stared at the screen. 1 minute passed. 5 minutes passed. 10 minutes passed. No reply came. It didn't even show as read. Why? Why won't you reply? Kate stood up and paced around the room. "Emily, where are you?" "Mama's here." She sent message after message. But none of them showed as read. As if the sender had suddenly disappeared. Kate sank onto the sofa. Her head was in confusion. Her daughter was supposed to be dead. It was confirmed by DNA testing. They'd held a funeral. There was a grave. But this message. And the most concerning line, whatever you do, don't contact Daddy. Why shouldn't she contact David? Did her husband know something? Kate pressed Lisa's number with trembling hands. After 3 rings, her friend's voice came through. Kate, what's wrong? At this late hour? Lisa, Kate's voice trembled with tears. I got an unbelievable message. From Emily. There was silence on the other end of the phone. Kate, what are you saying? I got a message from my daughter. Saying she's alive. But it said not to contact Daddy, Kate said, staring at the screen. Is this real? Or is it someone's cruel joke? Lisa chose her words carefully. Kate, calm down. That's most likely a malicious prank. Emily was, a year ago. I know, Kate cried out. I know. But my mother's instinct is telling me. This is real. You should contact the police, Lisa said. If this is really happening, an investigation needs to start immediately. Kate hesitated. But it said, don't contact Daddy. What if David is somehow involved? The moment she spoke those words, Kate understood what she was suspecting. She suspected her husband. That her husband might be involved in her daughter's death. Kate, what are you thinking? Lisa's voice sounded worried. I don't know, Kate held her head. But David's behavior has been strange lately. Coming home late. Intimate phone calls late at night. A receipt for children's clothes. Everything scattered, but... First, calm down. Come to my house tomorrow. Let's think about this together. After hanging up, Kate sat alone in the living room. She could hear David's sleeping breaths from upstairs. Her husband was sleeping, knowing nothing. Or was he acting, knowing everything? Kate felt guilty for suspecting her husband. David was also suffering from losing their daughter. He had cried at the funeral. He had been grieving for a year. But was that really true? The next morning, David was preparing to leave for work. I might be late again today, he said while tying his tie. I have a meeting with a client. Kate looked into her husband's eyes. Where are you meeting? David averted his gaze for a moment. At the office downtown. The usual place. What time do you think you'll be home? I don't know. Maybe 9 or 10. David put his coffee cup in the sink. Did something happen? You don't look well. Kate shook her head. Nothing. Be careful. After David left, Kate made a decision. She would follow her husband. She had to know the truth. At 6 o'clock in the afternoon, Kate was waiting in her car in David's office parking lot. Around 7, his black SUV came out. Kate followed at a distance. But David didn't head downtown. The car headed toward a suburban residential area. Kate's heart pounded. This wasn't a business meeting. After driving for about 30 minutes, David's car stopped in front of a house in a quiet residential neighborhood. Kate parked a little ways away and watched, holding her breath. David got out of the car and headed to the front door. He took out a key from his pocket. He had a key. This house wasn't an unfamiliar place to her husband. Kate got out of the car. Her legs were trembling. As she approached the house, she could see a gap in the curtains through the living room window. Kate quietly approached the window and looked inside. And what she saw made Kate's world collapse. David was in the living room, sitting next to a young woman. And between them was a small girl. The child was drawing with colored pencils. Kate's breath stopped. The child's hair had grown a little, but there was no mistake. It was Emily. Her daughter. She was alive. Tears overflowed. Her daughter was alive. But why here? Why with David? Why for a whole year? At that moment, Emily turned toward the window. Mother and daughter's eyes met. Her daughter's eyes widened. Her small lips moved. Mama. But the young woman noticed that gaze and quickly closed the curtain. Kate lost herself and ran to the front door. She pounded on the door violently. Open up. Give me back my daughter. Emily. A few seconds later, the door opened. David was standing there. His face was deathly pale. Kate, why are you here? Kate pushed past her husband and went inside. Emily, it's Mama. When she entered the living room, the young woman was holding her daughter and backing away. The woman was in her early 30s with beautiful blonde hair. Who is this person? The woman said. Kate reached out to her daughter. Emily, don't be scared. Mama's here. Emily reached out her hand while crying. Mama. But the woman held the daughter tightly. What are you talking about? I'm this child's mama. Who are you? Kate looked at the woman with an expression of disbelief. Then she turned back to her husband. David, what is this? Explain. David couldn't say anything. He just stood there with a pale face. Kate took out her smartphone with trembling hands. I'm calling the police. Right now. Wait, Kate, David spoke for the first time. Let me explain. Explain. Kate's voice trembled with anger. When my daughter's alive, you've been deceiving me for a whole year. You've been acting in front of me every day. Even crying at our daughter's funeral, it was all a lie. Kate was already calling the police. Hello, police. I've found my kidnapped daughter. Please come immediately. A few minutes later, the sound of sirens began to be heard in the distance. David and the young woman sat down as if resigned. Emily was crying in Kate's arms. Kate hugged her daughter, feeling the warmth she hadn't been able to embrace for a year. And at the same time, fierce anger toward her husband and the pain of betrayal tore at her chest. Police officers entered the house. At the front was Detective Thompson, who had the bearing of a veteran. He observed the situation inside with calm eyes. Someone please explain the situation, Detective Thompson said. Kate answered while still holding her daughter. This child is my daughter, Emily Miller. She was supposed to have died in a traffic accident a year ago. But she was alive. Here. The detective's eyes turned to David and the young woman. And you are? David couldn't say anything and kept his head down. The young woman spoke up. I'm Jessica Harris. This man's colleague. At that moment, Emily said in a small voice from Kate's arms, Mama, I was scared. Kate shed tears while stroking her daughter's hair. It's okay now. Mama's here. I'll never let go of you again. Detective Thompson said, You two, please accompany us to the police station. We'll hear the details. David finally looked at Kate. I'm sorry, Kate. Kate looked back at her husband coldly. Don't say anything. I can't believe your words anymore. The interrogation room at the police station was lit by cold fluorescent lights. David sat facing Detective Thompson across the desk. In the next room, Kate was watching the interrogation through the glass with Lisa. Mr. Miller, tell us everything from the beginning, Detective Thompson said quietly. David took a deep breath. Then he began to speak. I was having an affair with Jessica. For 3 years. She wanted children. But the doctor had told her she had a uterine problem and couldn't get pregnant. Kate clenched her fists on the other side of the glass. Lisa put her hand on her shoulder. David continued. Jessica was desperate. And one day she said, let's make Emily our daughter. At first I thought it was a joke. But she was serious. Detective Thompson asked, "So you faked the accident?" David nodded. That day, I took Emily out for a drive. Jessica was waiting at the planned location. She took Emily out of the car and put her in another car. My daughter cried and resisted, but tears overflowed from Kate's eyes. After that, I drove the car near a cliff. I put it in drive and jumped out of the car. The car fell off the cliff and burst into flames. I left some of Emily's hair in the car for DNA testing. Detective Thompson stared with cold eyes. Why did you go that far? David covered his face. I loved Jessica. I wanted to make a new family with her. But I couldn't divorce Kate. There were property division issues, and custody of our daughter. So you chose the path of making your daughter appear dead and living with your mistress, the detective finished his sentence. In another interrogation room, Jessica was being questioned. She tried to deny everything at first, but collapsed when presented with evidence. I just wanted to be a mother, Jessica said while crying. I wanted a child with David. But I couldn't have one. So I thought we'd make the daughter he already had our daughter. What's wrong with that? It's kidnapping, the detective said sternly. And there's also child abuse, death fabrication, and possible insurance fraud. Jessica looked up. I didn't abuse her. I loved Emily. I fed her properly, bought her clothes. I was going to send her to school. But you took her away from her real mother. Jessica couldn't say anything back to those words. A child psychologist was speaking gently with Emily. Kate sat beside her daughter, holding her small hand. Emily, where have you been this whole year? The psychologist asked gently. Emily answered in a small voice. At that woman's house. She was called Jessica. Daddy came sometimes too. Weren't you scared? Emily looked up at Kate. I was scared. But Jessica said if I ran away, she'd kill Mama. So I endured it. I wanted to protect Mama. Kate hugged her daughter and cried. A 4-year-old child had endured fear to protect her mother. That fact tore at her chest. But you know, Emily continued. One day, I found Daddy's smartphone. When Jessica was taking a bath. I remembered Mama's number. So I sent a message. But Jessica came back right away and took the phone. That's why there was only one message. Her daughter had been desperately seeking help. After a doctor examined Emily, he reported to Kate. There are no signs of physical abuse. Her nutritional condition isn't bad either. However, the psychological trauma is serious. Long-term counseling will be necessary. Kate nodded. I'll do anything for my daughter. A few weeks later, David and Jessica were formally charged with kidnapping, death fabrication, insurance fraud, and child abuse. On the day of the trial, the courtroom was filled with spectators. Kate stood on the witness stand as a witness. For this past year, I've been living in hell. Kate's voice was quiet but resonated throughout the courtroom. The pain of losing my daughter. I couldn't even hold her body, just placed small bones in a coffin and buried them. Every day, I cried in my daughter's room. I lost the meaning of living. Kate looked at David. But my daughter was alive. Near me, suffering. And my husband was acting in front of me every day. Crying at the funeral, comforting me, it was all lies. David kept his face down. The lawyer asked David for his final statement. He stood up and said in a trembling voice. I'm sorry, Kate. But I fell in love with Jessica too. I wanted to be happy with her. Kate laughed coldly. Love, you say? Is this love? Stealing your daughter, deceiving your wife, that's love? You don't know the meaning of love. Jessica also took the stand, but to the end she repeated, "I just wanted to be a mother." On the day of sentencing, the judge announced with a stern expression, "Defendant David Miller, for the crimes of kidnapping, death fabrication, and insurance fraud, I sentence you to 20 years in prison. Defendant Jessica Harris, for the crimes of kidnapping, child abuse, and conspiracy, I sentence you to 18 years in prison." Murmurs arose in the courtroom. David and Jessica were led away by officers. David looked back at Kate one last time. "Give my regards to Emily." Kate didn't answer. She just left the courtroom with Lisa. It was sunny outside. For the first time in a year and a half, Kate felt her heart become a little lighter. 1 year later, Kate and Emily had started living together in a new house. They left the old mansion in Beacon Hill and purchased a small house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. A cherry tree was planted in the yard, and when spring came, it would bloom with beautiful flowers. Emily went to a child psychologist for counseling twice a week. For the first few months she was troubled by nightmares and sometimes woke up crying in the middle of the night. "Mama, I had a dream that Jessica was coming," Emily said in a small voice. Kate immediately hugged her daughter. "It's okay. That woman won't come anymore. She's in prison. Mama will always protect you. Mama, will you stay with me forever?" "Of course. We'll never be apart again. I promise." Gradually the frequency of nightmares decreased. Emily started attending a local elementary school and made new friends. At first people around them were surprised that the child who was supposed to be dead came back, but with the teacher's consideration, Emily gradually fit into the class. One day, Emily came home from school and showed her a picture. The crayon drawing showed two people holding hands and smiling. "Mama and me," Emily said proudly. "Our family." Kate hugged her daughter with tears in her eyes. "It's a wonderful picture. I'll treasure it and display it." Kate had also resumed her work as a photographer. This time she decided to specialize in children's portrait photography. Every time she captured children's smiles through the camera lens, she realized how precious her days with Emily were. Lisa still visited once a week. The two drank tea together and sometimes reflected on what had happened. "Kate, you've really done well," Lisa said. "It's thanks to my daughter," Kate smiled while watching Emily playing in the yard. "My daughter was alive. Just that alone lets me move forward." 2 years later in spring, Emily had turned 7. At school, she was given an assignment to write a composition about family. Emily held her pencil and wrote carefully. "My family is just Mama. But Mama is the strongest and kindest in the world. There used to be Daddy too. But Daddy did bad things and isn't here anymore. Mama and I are happy together." The teacher read the composition and called Kate. "Emily is growing into a wonderful child. She's very positive and thoughtful toward her friends." Kate's chest filled with emotion. Having overcome that terrible experience, her daughter was growing up strong. One evening, Emily asked Kate a question. "Mama, what is a real family?" Kate sat her daughter on her lap and answered gently. "It's protecting each other. Not lying. Supporting each other no matter what. Being connected not by blood, but by heart. That's a real family." Emily nodded with a serious expression. "Then, Mama and I are a real family." "That's right. A family connected by the strongest bond in the world." Kate tried not to think any more about what happened to David and Jessica after that. David was probably spending his days in loneliness in prison. The divorce was finalized, and his visitation rights to Emily were completely revoked. She heard that Jessica was receiving psychiatric treatment in prison, but she didn't know the details. What was important to Kate wasn't the past, but the future. A new life walking together with her daughter. Under the cherry tree, Kate and Emily took a photo together. They set the timer and smiled together. The sound of the shutter clicked, recording a happy moment of mother and daughter. "Mama, I love you so much," Emily said. Kate hugged her daughter. "I love you too. You're everything to me." The spring breeze lifted cherry blossom petals into the air. Mother and daughter, leaning on each other, were welcoming a new season. As a real family connected not by blood but by heart. And they believed this bond could overcome any trial.